Welcome to World Day 2021 collaborative project. Last month, we introduced a collaborative event, Frogwood, started from 2007, based in Oregon, USA. In the last week of July, Frogwood gathered around 30 artists to work together and created many beautiful artworks. Today, we have invited 4 participants to share their experiences with us in Frogwood. Let's welcome Marjin Wall. Hi.
Hi.
And Kristin Shiga. Hi. And Kimberly Winkle.
Hello.
Hi. And Kailee Bosch here.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you all for being here. Let's have you introduce yourself first. Marjin, would you go first?
Hi, I'm Marjin Wall. I live in Portland, Oregon, and I'm a wood artist that focuses primarily on turning, and I do everything from functional to sculptural works. And I'm on the board of directors of Frogwood.
Great, thank you. And Shiga? Kristin.
No worries. My name is Kristin Shiga, and I actually live on Big Island of Hawaii. And I started as a furniture maker, but I am a metalsmith. So I got to play with all the woodworkers for this event.
Great. And Kimberly?
Hi, I'm Kimberly Winkle. I live in Cookeville, Tennessee, and I'm primarily a woodworker, but I also do a lot of wood turning. And for the Frogwood collaboration, I made some small scale works that show my typical use of color and line and mark making, and collaborated with Kristin on creating some jewelry.
Great. And Kailee?
Hi, I'm Kailee Bosch. I'm in Fort Collins, Colorado. I am an artist working primarily in wood and bronze, and my background is in wood turning. But today I kind of use a lot of different processes, and I consider myself to make functional objects and speculative designs.
Great, thank you. Marjin, as you mentioned, you are one of the organizers from Frogwood. So could you give us a quick glance of how Frogwood 2021 went?
Well, we had 30 people. We had it at Dale Larson, who used to be the head of the AAW, at his barn and backyard, because we had to scale it down a little this year because of COVID. In fact, we were really lucky to be able to host an in-person collaboration at all. It was really fun. We were all outdoors. We had tents. We had his barn, 30 people, a lot of fun. And I think a lot of people were really ready to get out of their own shops and work with other people.
Great. And Kristin, I think this is your 3rd time coming back to Frogwood. Could you tell us how did you start and how do you like it?
I was one of the first attendees in the early years, which was actually at Dale's, which is kind of funny. For me, it was like coming home. And it started out small as well. But this is about the 12th collaboration that I think that's right, maybe 15th collaboration that I've attended around the world.
Oh, wow.
And because I've seen so many different experiences of collabs all over, I also really appreciate it. I felt like this Frogwood was very special. I felt like everyone's heart was really open. And the thing that's really amazing about all of these events is that everybody kind of leaves, best case scenario, everyone leaves their ego at the door. You know, and there are people working alongside masters who may still be in school or may still be emerging, and everybody just treats each other with equal respect. So I think all of us came away really inspired. I know I did. And it was just the kickstart that I think all of us needed after being kind of shut down for a year and a half.
Yeah, great. And Kimberly, I think this is your 2nd time coming back to Frogwood. What makes you want to come back?
Oh, I think one of the biggest part of being, or the biggest thing for me, for being a part of Frogwood and other collaborative events such as Emma Lake and Echo Lake and even World Wood Day, is the sense of community and the community building that happens at these events. Even though they're for a short amount of time, you get to meet such wonderful people that, like Kristin said, there are so many very talented people that whose creative practices you might aspire to attain at some point, but they're all so nice and so helpful and giving of their time and their knowledge. So I think for me, what makes me want to keep participating in World Wood Day and Frogwood and the different collaborative events is the community, growing the community, building the community, and then sustaining the community.
Right. Thank you. And Kailee, I think this is your first time in Frogwood.
Yes,
How did you
yeah.
find out about this event? And is it any different from your imagination?
Yeah, this was my first collaborative experience,
Mm.
any sort of thing like that. And I guess I tried not to go in with too much expectation. I had heard about it from some other people before. So I had an idea of like what it would be like. But yeah, I really tried to go in with limited expectations and just take the experience for what it was. And I was really happy with the experience. And I think that it really, it's important to me as an artist to have a well-rounded practice, and I think part of that is meeting other people and connecting with other people, and especially over the last year, it was kind of hard to connect with people. So this was a really great experience.
Wonderful. Marjin, as you and Greg mentioned last time, there are no rules of how people work together in Frogwood. So I think the four of you probably all work together and also with many other people in different projects during this event. So next, I'm going to bring up some of the works that you have done and then have you talk about how they are made. The first item is called Tiny Tiny Treasures. I personally really like it. It's such a cute item that I think it looks like a treasure box full of goodies from Frogwood. So Marjin, I know you are a part of it. Could you tell us how this is made?
Well, I had a very tiny part in it. I think I might have turned an ebony pea for it. But every time we've had a Frogwood recently, we've had some kind of a tiny treasures thing, which appeals to people a lot because you get a little smattering of many different artists. And everybody can easily make some tiny piece. So anyway, John Worth came up with this idea and prepared the box and everything. And then you can see there's all kinds of people's handiwork. Every year, everybody loves the tiny treasure pieces. And so I think it's something that we will probably do forever in some way, shape, or form.
That was actually not any of my work by itself in the Tiny Treasures box, but I helped the people who were working in metal. And that's the other thing that I think is really magical about these collaborative events is that there are demos, and I use air quotes because they're not formal, but there are demos going on and there's learning and teaching going on informally everywhere. And I really think that this is the future of education. Collaboration is the future of education. So I see that as kind of tying into the whole theme as well.
So the next item I want to show is called Sanctuary. I think the concept of this item comes from Kimberly, and then many people also joined in. Kimberly, could you share with us how did this start and how was it accomplished?
So Sanctuary came about just sort of naturally and intuitively, like a lot of the works that come together at a collaboration. And so for this particular piece, I had found those house forms in the parts pile, which are tables full of all kinds of everything. Like for example, the feet of this piece are old doorknobs that I found in the parts pile. And the house forms were also elements that I found in the parts pile. The metal rod were elements that I found in the parts pile. So you start off with this weird collection of materials, and then that's what prompts like your ideas, and that's what gets you going. At least making that first step is putting these materials together that I probably wouldn't have sought out on my own necessarily, but then they fit conceptually with the work. Now, coincidentally, I do happen to use houses a lot in my work. And so it was kind of serendipity, I guess, that I found those house forms. And I wasn't quite sure what to do with them. And then I looked around and I know all the talented people that were working under the tent that I was working, and that they're really good with surface ornamentation and addressing the surface as though it were a canvas. And so I just handed out the different house forms to the different people and then assembled them all together on that big slab. And what's great is that they're individually very unique and special, but collectively they're much more powerful. So it's kind of just like the group of Frogwood, all of the artists coming together. We're all wonderful and unique and talented, but when you put us all together in a team, we're even that much greater. So I think it's just a nice kind of, I guess, symbol of the event.
I also want to talk about these two other items that you are involved. One is called the Wishbone Box. I think this one you collaborate with Marjin here. And the other
Yes.
one is called the Flower Vessel.
Sure. So let's start with the wishbone box. A lot of times you are asked to bring various materials to contribute to the parts pile. So what I brought with me for the parts pile was a bandsaw box form that I had started but had not finished. So I shaped the box and created that kind of voluptuous, at least I find it kind of voluptuous, sensuous form. And Marjin is super gifted and really good with milk paint as well. And that surface, having those smooth, kind of rounded surfaces, really invites you to want to touch it and feel it. And so milk paint is the perfect paint for really providing that extra like sensuous surface. And so I handed it off to Marjin, like I said, because Marjin's so good with milk paint, and she added all these wonderful layers and colors that she sanded through that really highlights the forms. You can see like on the ridges how she's been able to sand through to different colors. And so it becomes like an outline along those lines and those ridges. So that's how that piece came to be. So this was made primarily by Mike Free. And he really wanted to learn about milk paint. And so he was asking me questions and wanted advice. So I walked him through verbally the process of using milk paint. And so when he finished the piece, that's kind of the role of at the collaboration as well, is if somebody has played a significant or decent role in its creation, then you give them credit. I talked him and walked him through the process of milk paint, and also explained how to use the gold leaf that he used on those rings. Although my fingers didn't actually touch it, I guess I did help in its creation.
So next one, we're going to talk about the two other items that have similar characteristics. They are called Radiation and Tuplet. And Kailee, I think they are the extensions from your creations, and you work with two different group of people to create them.
This was a piece that I came to Frogwood with some parts to make. What I had done before I came to Frogwood was I cast the bronze pieces, which are the black pieces on the end, blackish. And they're cast from 3D printed parts. And then I had also collected the wood before I came to Frogwood, but I did finish turning the wood and the spindles while I was at Frogwood. I came with this piece without any sort of intention of who I was going to give it to or what was going to happen with it. My intention was for somebody to have some sort of surface design on it, or carving or texturing or painting. I was lucky that Marjin and Kim both were willing to collaborate with me on it. It's part of a previous series that I've made called my tube sculptures. And I call them tube sculptures because there's an interior. Despite the spindles not being a tube, there's sort of like a vessel, like an interior inside the form between the spindles and the bronze pieces. And that's why they're called my tube sculptures. And the name came from people at Frogwood were kept calling it a radiator based off sort of old-fashioned radiators, and I decided to just go with it. And the milk paint, basically Marjin did half of the spindles, Kim did half of the spindles, and then the discs kind of slide on there and were turned by Marjin too.
The next one is called the Tuplet. This is a piece that you work with another artist.
His name is Lon Nicolo. We had collaborated before, actually several times before coming to Frogwood. We knew each other's skill sets, and sort of towards the end of Frogwood, this piece came together. I had some leftover bronze pieces that I wasn't sure what to do with. And we had talked about this before, how it could be interesting to make. Oftentimes these forms that I make that are similar to my tube sculptures are so rigid, and I purposely make them very organized. So this was kind of like a really playful way to come back to that same idea. And yeah, I think in the description I might have said something like it's more playful and adds a little bit of delicacy and movement to a form that otherwise would have been so rigid. And I think that that's a pretty good description.
Great. And I also want to talk about this other little installation that you were involved, which is blue dragonfly, you have a really interesting name called Lip Lula. Is that correct?
You know, I should have asked how to pronounce it before I came to this meeting, but I forgot. Marjin, can you potentially say it or no?
Lily
Okay.
Boule. It's
Okay.
dragonfly in French.
In French, yeah.
Oh, okay. No wonder I cannot pronounce it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, me neither. I really should have asked about that.
Great.
This was a piece that we started at the beginning of the week. Me, again, Laurent Nicolo, and two other artists. I wasn't the one that came up with the idea. It was actually Laurent. I think he had a conversation with Zaya, and Laurent and I had done some larger sort of bugs in the past, just as a fun side project, and they had found that similar interest. I and Laurent turned the body of the dragonfly, and then we kind of passed it along to Zaya, and then Zaya made a connection with Winona, and she made the beautiful wings for it. At the end of the week, it actually turned out to be this cool object. Not that I didn't expect it to at the beginning of the week, but I really didn't have any expectation for it at all. And it was kind of fun because it was made, the four of us were, I believe, the youngest artists at Frogwood, and that was something that I know Laurent really wanted to make a point of, because yeah, it was, I think he wanted to work with some of the younger artists, and I think that was a really great way to do that.
And the next one, we're going to talk about Kristin, your works. We know that you are a jewelry designer. We can see it on your website. I didn't know you used to work with furniture before. And we can see lots of your elegant works in the final artworks here in Frogwood. But I want to talk about the ones that you and Kimberly worked together, that you guys create a series of earrings and necklaces, and I think they are really wonderful. Could you tell us, how did you get the ideas of making these?
Thank you. These were some of my favorite to work on too. The first set was the kind of rust colored ones. And that actually started from the peapod, right, Kimberly?
Yep.
The peapod on the far left is cast in solid sterling silver by Ron Gurton. And he brought a number of castings with him, and he also brought his casting machine. So we had that form to work with, and Kimberly carved the amazing pod forms in wood. And again, there's that beautiful milk paint with those great textures. And then Marjin, I decided that the peapod was really naked looking by itself. So I was standing there talking to Kimberly, like, what can we put in here? And Marjin said, I'll do it, which is how a lot of collab pieces kind of end up forming, is by somebody kind of just stepping up and seeing where they can fill in their own skills. And so that little piece is ebony. Kimberly really kind of ran with the pod forms, and I came in the second day, or was it? It was the first day you whipped these out, right?
Yeah, I did.
So the very first day, I think I finished this the very first day. Whenever I see Kimberly's work, I want to make it wearable. It is that luxe feeling of the milk paint, and something about the textures. They feel very jewel-like to me. And I don't only make jewelry, I'm a metalsmith in general, but these I really want to see in relation to the body. It was such a fun gift to me to get to play with them and make them wearable. And the necklace in this case, I used sterling silver to make all of the findings and to make another element similar to the peapod, in the sense that it kind of echoed the shape or went along with the shape of these buoys. For the cordage, I live in Hawaii, and I've gotten the chance to learn actually from somebody who also has attended World Wood Day, Bo Jack Key.
Oh yeah, I know him.
Yeah, so Bo has taught me a traditional Hawaiian cordage. And so I brought that technique to the collab too, and taught a few people how to do the cordage. So that was kind of another fun cross-cultural exchange.
I also saw you were involved in some other pieces. There are two of them that are really, really interesting. This one is called the Fisherman's Calabash, and the other one is called the Koi Toy. Could you share the stories behind these with us, please?
Yes, and actually, this piece was mostly made by Bill Moore. So Bill actually came to me after the piece was almost complete. And you can tell it has a part of a saxophone in it from the parts pile.
Yes.
And he makes pipes. He is well known for making and smoking, actually, pipes. He came to me because he had the blue cord and he didn't know how to connect it elegantly. And I wanted to share, Kim was talking a little bit about, how we do acknowledge people's contributions, even if it is just in an advisory role by adding their name to it. I want to add that there, towards the end, particularly when you're starting to jettison projects because you realize you've taken on more than you can finish in a week. A lot of times people will be like, please just do this for me. I'll put your name on it. So this was Bill coming up to me and saying, I'll put your name on it. Please help. So all I did was do the brass connections to the cord on this. I really, unfortunately, was not involved earlier than that. So, but yeah, Koi Toy was a little bit different. It was one of the first things I started and literally the last thing I finished. The blue piece is a piece of resin that was brought and put in the parts pile. And it actually is, it's a double-sided piece. I don't know if you have the other side photo, but it's a double-sided brooch. And Winona Huang and I worked on this. So the resin was actually also, the disc was poured by Winona. And then she fabricated the koi, and then we riveted those in place. And on the other side, there's like a little bit of a cage form and a little silver bead that kind of you can play with. It makes a sound and also kind of moves around like a toy. So that's where that came from. And there's a lot of playfulness and lightheartedness that comes through in the work at CoLab. I think partially because it feels like play to be working with everybody and to not be attached to the outcome.
Right.
So much of CoLab and the success, I think, of collaboration, both the events and the finished pieces, is about learning to let go. If you make a piece, like when Kim trusted me to she just put them on my bench, like, and then that's it. Everything else was my decision. I came and consulted with her, but I didn't have to. And that part of being able to let go of something that we usually think of as so precious, is a fabulous exercise for also getting outside of your comfort zone and seeing how somebody else sees your work and the potential that they see in your work. I think it's like Kailee was saying too, it's like, oh, I never thought of it that way. So that's the fun part about all of these pieces. I don't think that Koi Toy would have come about if Winona had kept that piece to herself.
So the next ones I want to talk about are the series of prints. It's called Frogwood Collab prints. You have 4 of them total, I think, with 4 different frames and 2 different prints. Marjin, could you share with us the story behind these? Because I think many people are involved in these ones.
Yes, there were a lot of people involved, not just the people at the collaboration, but a number of people who couldn't come to the collaboration. We started this idea last year, and really we adopted it after a similar collaboration that they do at Echo Lake every year, where everybody does a print and then they make frames, people decorate the frames and they auction them off. And then also all the participants go home with a print. So it's a great way to include everyone, and to, especially since this year the event was smaller, to include the people that we couldn't invite to come in person. And then we also have a segment of people who are artists around the country who just wrote in and said, hey, can I do one too? And so we've said, sure. And then I made 4 different frames. We got all the prints or the lino blocks back in advance, and Rory Sparks very kindly did all the printing for us. And then I make and bring the frames to the event, and different people decorated the frames. When I received the lino cuts back in the mail, I look at them and I think, oh my God, they're so different. How are these ever going to work together? But I just take the box of them over to Rory, and she somehow magically lays them out in a way that works. It's a big shout out to her for doing it so nicely, because I think the way they come out, they're just great. And then, of course, everybody who is involved, either remotely or at the collaboration, also goes home with a print as a memento of their experience at Frogwood.
Great. So the next question is for all of you. We have talked about some of the works that you guys are involved, but is there any other works that maybe you are not involved but really impressed you and you want to talk about? Also, is there any moment in the event that you really want to just share with us?
There is one of the participants who is also on the board, and for me was the entree into the whole world of collaboration is an artist named Greg Wilbur. And Greg is a raiser. He's a metalsmith, and he raises bowls and vessels out of, and other organic forms out of flat sheet. And it's kind of a lost art, and nobody really teaches it. It's really hard to find people who you can learn this from. And he just hammers for 5 days. I do not know where he gets the energy or stamina. His hand is kind of literally formed like this all the time, but I'm always set up at every collab near him, and that tink, 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 tink is the sound of collaboration to me, because he's sitting there teaching so many people, getting their hands in it, letting them try it. And I think it's really cool, especially with woodworkers who are used to turning forms that are symmetrical and doing it reductively. And, you know, it's such a different way of thinking about similar forms, building volume, building hollow forms in a different material using a totally different technique. So I just wanted to say that to me is a huge part of this collaboration, as well as many others, that generous vibe of schlepping hundreds of pounds of hammers and stakes and helping introduce people to that.
Great. We had the honor to have Greg join us last month to introduce Frogwood. He's such a
of course.
He's such a cute character. Yes.
One of the pieces that I really liked a lot was, well, what I love about it is the spirit of the piece and how the artists exchanged, I guess, ideas and processes. And it was a piece, it's a big wall piece that's carved and painted wood. And what I like about it is that Minnie Geary, who's a two-dimensional artist, who primarily, I think, works with an Indian tradition of miniature painting, like really tiny, intricate works. And she does this intricate repetitive pattern. She uses that motif a lot in her work. And I liked how she was able to blow it up on a larger scale on the wood. So John Strobine carved it, and then they collaborated and consulted with each other about the paint colors and how to go about painting it. And Marjin also advised them on that. So I really love that exchange. The piece is really wonderful, but what I like more than the finished piece is how it came to be. And I love the idea of Minnie's drawings being translated into a larger scale and a different material.
And John actually spoke to me about the process on that piece as well. And he also felt really pushed in a good way by it, outside his comfort zone and into new realms and formats and techniques. So again, I think even though he works in wood, that was a really new experience for him as well.
I think that's one reason I love about collaborative projects, because when you look at the final pieces, all the memories come back. Like, you know, who did what conversation you have, you know, what pushed you to do this, make this decision and this and that. When you do a project by yourself, I think that's not as common as this one. But when you do a collaborative project, you see it, it feels like you bring you back to the time you spend with the others. Yeah.
Although the other thing that happens after you do a few collaborations is that people will come up to you and say, oh, I have this piece that you did. I bought it at the auction after such and such. And you're like, I didn't do that. So sometimes you're also making so many things so fast that you actually also, I think it's that letting go part. You just don't associate it with yourself as fully. It's kind of funny.
So for you, what does Frogwood mean to you? Let's start with you, Marjin.
For me, it's really more than anything, it's about learning and community. It's a chance to get exposed to new ideas, new techniques, to think of ways you would like to expand your own work, but also just the connections with people. It's like, I think I first really met Kim through a collaboration, and, you know, over the years, we've become really good friends. And I've met Kristin through a collaboration. That it's, you know, you meet other people who have similar passions, and it gives you just a very solid connection. And I love that more than anything else.
Great. And Kristin?
I mean, I think community really is the biggest takeaway. I would reiterate what I said about education and just watching that unfold. But I think the inspiration, the way that my studio practice changes after returning from a collab is always just the refresher that I need. It's like a breath of fresh air in your studio practice whenever you get to participate.
Great. And Kimberly?
Yeah, I just have to echo similar sentiments as Marjin, and that is, for me, the biggest part is community. The friendships I've made. In fact, Kristin and I had worked together previously professionally through a gallery, museum. And the actual first time we met, I think, was boarding a plane to go to Saskatchewan for Emma Lake. And then we've since, you know, we cross paths every couple of years at collaborative events mostly. And so just having these friendships that you forge by spending hours at play, it's hard work. Like you go home and you're tired, you're exhausted because you put in a lot of physical and mental work on creating these things. But there is a freedom from pressure when you're working this way. And for me, when I'm working at home in my studio, I can just really fuss the details and obsess over little tiny things and just, you know, like fret and not make a decision because I'm so worried about making the wrong one. But at a collaboration, like, you don't have time for that. And it's really, really liberating and exciting. And it's a nice reminder when I come back home to my studio that it's okay to play. It's okay to make these things and just see what happens. And maybe nothing will happen with it. Maybe it's a failure, but that's also a really wonderful and valuable learning experience. So I think just it, for me, I guess it forces me to hit a reset button and start fresh again. And then just the community, I would say, is the biggest part. But the next one is the refresh and the spirit and the freedom that I feel when I'm collaborating.
Great. And Kailee?
Yeah, well, that's pretty hard to follow up on because I feel like I could reiterate everything that everybody else has already said. But for me, as like a new participant, I feel like it really got me out of my comfort zone, which is a good thing. Sometimes I just get stuck in my studio and I'm not looking for outside advice, or I'm not looking to communicate with others or have some sort of like outside connection. So yeah, just the community, it's a really cool thing. And I hope that in the future I could participate in more collaboration.
Great. I think that will be all for today. Thank you all very, very much. And congratulations for all the great works you have done. I really look forward to more beautiful encounters and creations in the future from Frogwood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.